Hi, I'm Matt Gibson with Sounds Like Beer, and today we're at Left Field Brewery in Toronto's East End to talk with head brewer Mark Murphy. Let's head inside. I always like to begin at the beginning. So what was your first exposure to craft beer, and sort of how did that impact you and sort of change the course of your future?
I guess my first exposure to beer in general would have been late high school, early university. And at that point I was really going to the LCBO to seek out new things, get the European lagers, some English ales, and that sort of experience, the pick and choose your own mix pack, got me into, I think, craft beer and exploring more worlds of different beer styles and flavors.
And then what about Ontario beers? When did those sort of start figuring into your mind, or did they at all?
Well, that was sort of part of the same process. Just the LCBO has been supportive for a long time of Ontario-made beer.
And so you were an accountant, as many people know, and you decided to go to Niagara College, the brewing program. When you decided to go to Niagara College, were you always thinking, I'm going to open my own brewery, or were you just thinking, I want to work in the beer industry?
That was sort of the goal, though, is open my own brewery. I never thought it would happen as fast as it did. Really didn't have a time frame in mind, but the idea was to go back to brewing school and combine those new skills with my old skills of being an accountant. As well, my wife Mandy is in marketing, so it's a pretty good fit for the two of us to start our own business. So,
what was it about owning a brewery that really appealed to you? Have you always sort of had an entrepreneurial edge to you, or was it you just love the beer world?
I wouldn't call it always having an entrepreneurial edge, because this is really my first business. But I always wanted to work for myself and not really be behind a desk the whole time.
Right. So. Have you found that this has really been everything you were looking for in a lot of ways in terms of such a drastic career change?
Absolutely, yeah. It's everything and more, because there's a ton more work than anyone could ever imagine.
When you guys started, you didn't have, you started as a contract brewer.
Yep.
And you had your recipes, or a few recipes. What was sort of in your mind the types of beers that you wanted to make? What did you want to bring to the Ontario craft beer market?
Well, when Mandy and I were developing our business plan, we sort of thought there was opportunity for a darker beer in our portfolio, which is why Ephus Oatmeal Brown is our flagship.
Okay.
At that time, say early 2012, a lot of breweries had previously made brown ales, but they weren't spending a lot of time focusing on them at that time.
Right.
Because IPAs were taking off and they're spending more time on their pale ale. So not a lot of breweries were really offering that, and we thought that if we went to a licensee that didn't have a dark beer on draft, that at least one of their 8 to 10 to 12 taps should be a dark beer,
right.
And we were going to make it. And so that was sort of where we came from to start. We also made Maris our pale ale, and we were supposed to have 643, our double IPA, as our flagship as well.
Okay.
So that's malt forward, hop forward, and sort of easier drinking.
Right.
And that was our starting
That's
three.
a good little portfolio.
Yeah.
And then where have you guys started to see your beers going from there? Because now you have your anniversary Saison, you've got your grandstand hoppy wheat, you've got a whole variety of new stuff coming out. So what has sort of been the guiding principles behind those beers?
So now we sort of evolved to just having Ephus and Maris as our flagships, and then everything else be either one-offs or seasonals.
Okay.
So one of our biggest selling seasonals is Sunlight Park Belgian Saison with grapefruit zest. And actually that'll be in the LCBO this year for the first time, which is cool. Thank you. And then we'll also be spending a good deal of time brewing Bricks and Mortar Coffee Porter, which was brand new when we launched this facility.
Yeah.
So we're trying to brew seasonally, but also put through some one-offs to keep it interesting and keep people coming back.
And speaking of the Bricks and Mortar, so you've done a couple collaborations now. The Bricks and Mortar was with Pilot Roasters down the street.
Yep.
And you recently did a marshmallow stout with La Carnita Sweet Jesus.
Yeah.
So how did that come about? How did that sort of collaboration, whose idea was that to brew a marshmallow stout?
I guess it started from us. They approached us about brewing a beer with them, and they wanted to leverage their Sweet Jesus brand, so we knew we had an opportunity to make a beer that was a little crazy, I guess. So we thought we could have fun with sort of a dessert-inspired beer, and that's where we came up with...
And was it weird brewing with like actual marshmallows? Was there any worry about like gumming up the works?
That's the problem with marshmallows.
Yeah.
Marshmallows are just sugary gelatin.
Right.
So we didn't rely on adding really a whole ton of marshmallows to the kettle. We did throw a couple in ceremoniously.
Right.
But we also added lactose sugar, which is an unfermentable milk sugar,
okay.
To give it more of a body and sweetness. and then we added vanilla to try and replicate those two combined marshmallow.
I see.
And then we also served it with a roasted marshmallow
right.
on the glass.
I've had that. That's a nice touch.
Thanks.
I like that. Your branding, and I know Mandy has played a large role in that because sort of her background. What was it about baseball that really drew you guys to that branding?
We're baseball fans. I started playing baseball as a 6-year-old in T-ball.
Oh, wow.
And I grew up playing, I didn't play hockey, I played baseball every summer. And we thought it was just a fun way to sort of represent ourselves. If someone didn't remember our exact name, they'll at least remember our theme. So
right.
we're
baseball brewery.
Yeah.
So you mentioned before you originally wanted your double IPA to be one of your flagships, and that IPAs are still very popular in the craft beer world. But do you see sort of a new style coming up that you think will be the next IPA? I know that sort of phrase is always thrown around in blogs. Oh, it's the next IPA or sours or whatever.
Yeah.
Do you see that happening with another style of beer at all, or do you see sort of the trends?
Yes
that'll
and
be
no.
in craft
Like
beer?
they've been predicting the next IPA for a couple of years,
Yeah.
but IPA is still really outsold everything else. But you're seeing more and more fruited IPAs, like Grapefruit Sculpin in the States.
Yeah.
So that's something craft brewers are doing. Obviously, sours are growing, but it's still very time intensive and space intensive.
Yeah. So what are Left Field's plans for, say, the next 5 years, and where do you guys see yourself in the brewing community?
That's a tough question. This year's all about just perfecting our process and establishing, the Left Field way of how we do things before we do grow in double or even triple digits.
Right.
We want to just set ourselves up for growth, and you're adding more and more staff. You want them to come on board and easily get accustomed to how things are supposed to be done.
Right.
That said, within 5 years, I would expect to have our building here filled with fermenters. Right now we have 5 fermenters. We can hold 12, so I think by the end of 5 years, hopefully we'll be operating at that capacity.
That's a lot more beer coming out.
Yeah.
That's awesome. What is your current favorite beer that you guys make?
That's a tough one.
It's like picking a favorite child, I know, but
I usually say that it's the one that we just kegged because it's the most, it's the freshest absolute possible beer.
Right.
And that's what we're all about, is just the fresh beer.
Right. So obviously you guys are, you're a community brewery, you're a local brewery. How have you seen the brewing community, the beer loving community, and just the neighbors around you sort of responding to the brewery, sort of on a larger scale?
In short, it's been overwhelming. It really started when we signed the lease for the space and we had an open house just to show people our space and where we'll be popping up. We had, I think, 1,500 people come through that day, which was outrageous. But
and you guys didn't even have beer at that point. I mean, I guess
we had
contract
brewed beer, but we did not have a very nice space whatsoever.
Right.
But yeah, we survived the summer. Oftentimes we didn't have any beer in the fridge, so that's all part of the growing pains. But the community overall has been very supportive, and just the industry in general is great that way.
If you were talking to someone who said, I really want to start a brewery, I want to follow your footsteps, I'm not happy in my current career and I want to become a brewer, or I want to own a brewery, what would be the biggest piece of advice you would give them?
I guess either you're a brewer to start with, maybe a home brewer, or you're more just on the business side and you want to start a brewery. I would say either hire someone that knows what they're doing, brewing related. If you are a home brewer, work in a brewery for at least a year, if not 3 years.
Right.
Because there is a lot to building a brewery.
There's a difference between brewing 5 gallons at home and 50 gallons or 100 gallons at a time.
Yeah.
Right. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with me. What would you suggest we drink?
Well, we just kegged our Prospect Single Hop IPA with Galaxy, so that's tasting pretty good.
All right, well, let's go try it.
All right.
I'll let you lead the way.
Thanks.